stay curious, keep learning, and make sure you apply what you learn. Make sure you share what you learned, and make also sure that you combine everything into your own thing and start sharing you and your uniqueness to the world. Hi, and welcome to Lead Well. Recently, I've had a few conversations around the topic of learning and how we can apply what we learned and what is the next step of learning. Because I think it's important to not only consume information and knowledge, but also then do something about it. And a couple of years ago, I thought about a model that we can use to think about our way we approach learning, because lifelong learning is a topic that is important for all of us. Learning is really only the first step to then do something with it. And let's look into what I mean by that. So, you know me, I am a big fan of NeuroGraphica because I have experienced that once I bring things on paper, it's so much easier, not only for myself, but also for my clients to follow, to understand, and especially if they are doing their own drawings. And when I do NeuroGraphica with my leadership clients, I'm not really using the full NeuroGraphica like my NeuroGraphica trainer colleagues would do. I'm usually not using color. I'm usually not using a lot of sophistication, just because we need to get a really quick result. And that's why the way I use NeuroGraphica, I refer to it as Pragmatic NeuroGraphica, because it's just that. It's the most important thing that we need to get a result, to get a difference, to enable change. And so let me show you today how I leverage NeuroGraphica in those cases and what elements of this technique I'm using. Again, with regards to lifelong learning and learning overall. Now, for you that are listening to my podcast in an audio format, you might want to jump over to YouTube at some point and actually look at what I'm doing here. And at the same time, I'll make sure to describe what I'm doing so that you can visualize what I'm talking about in your own mind. Now, let me switch over to my drawing board and let me share with you my model about learning and what I think is a very important way of looking at it. So this is my camera, and I've already prepared a rough scheme of a pyramid, because when we think about learning, I think the first thing that we all start with is really consuming information. And consuming information is not yet learning, because to learn, we need to retain the information that we're consuming. And there are different ways of doing that. And I'm sure you already looked into some of it, and we can talk about it if that's of interest. But for now, just let's assume that whatever we have consumed, we retain it, or at least those elements of it that we deem important. And let's now collect the most important things that you have learned. So the basis of it all is to learn. When we use NeuroGraphica, what we usually do is we do not only write text on our paper, but we use shapes. We use the most basic shapes, and the easiest one to use really is a circle. So let's use circles for everything that you have learned. And those of you who have pen and paper at hand, you can draw along. And those of you who haven't, you can probably do the same exercise once you get to your desk and have a bit of time, because it's really interesting to think about what is it that you have learned over time. And it can be an experience. It can be life experience. It can be a topic that you have actually studied. I have studied quite a few languages, so that's something that I can write in here. So languages. And then I have learned the trust technique. And of course, it's lifelong learning as well, because there is always something that we can improve on. Then the technique that we're using right now, which is NeuroGraphica. Of course, I've learned that as well. NeuroGraphica. And what else? I got a bit of IT knowledge. I put that in here as well. And then coaching and training. And then what else? Oh yeah, I'm a Heilpraktiker, which is a naturopath. So I could open my practice and actually start heal people. And of course, I also learned some healing techniques with that. And then, yeah, I would put it in here. So I learned to ride as well, horseback riding. I'm an avid knitter. Maybe that's not too important here, but still. That's something I have learned over time. I have learned quite a bit about psychology, NLP. I'll put it in here because it's something that I have been using quite a bit also with my clients. I have learned quite a bit about leadership as well. So you see, I am putting a lot of different things in here as well. So I don't need to limit myself to certain categories. I can go across what just comes to mind. And I put it on paper using circles in the basis of a pyramid just to recognize what I've already done. By the way, I can also put in a circle with a question mark because there are so many things that I probably cannot think about right now. And the interesting thing is once I put a question mark there, my brain starts to look for the answer. So my brain starts to try to figure out what this question mark stands for. So that's always good to have one or two or even more placeholders. Even if you're just writing out your lists, make sure you have some dotted lines or some placeholders so that your brain is activated and will start looking for content. Now, if you're finished with the first line, and by the way, that's a perfect exercise if you are in a period where you're starting to doubt yourself. Sometimes, especially when there is a situation where we probably are not happy in our job, when we think about leaving, when we actually probably have already left, then we might have a difficult period where we doubt ourselves, we lose our confidence. And so doing this type of exercise, doing this type of reflection upon all the things that you have already learned, that you know, that's a really important one. So think about that. You could also do this on one sheet of paper and just put in some circles and make a collection. And then you put the paper somewhere where you walk by from time to time, and then you can add things there. So it's a wonderful exercise for your self-confidence. Now, here we wanted to look into a model that talks about learning. And the first step is really things that we learned. But learning alone does not help if we don't do anything with that knowledge. And that's why the second step really is to apply what you have learned. And so, for example, I am offering coaching sessions. So this is where I apply what I've learned. And then also I have applied my languages. I apply those when I travel. And so again, you can put in circles as placeholders. If you don't come up with the content immediately, just put in some question marks. And then once again, once you walk by this drawing, you can then fill in the missing gaps, and your brain will help you do that. Now, once we have learned and we apply things that we have learned, that's, by the way, something that's really important also in a business environment. I just recently, one of those conversations I mentioned was with a leader. She has an open headcount for a new manager. And she says she has interviewed someone that she's known for quite some time because that person, the applicant, is in her team. And she's an avid learner, but what she's lacking is the application of what she's learned. And that actually happens quite a lot. So you have people who do one course after the other, but never really start to apply it, never really start to practice it, let alone to teach and share, because that is really the next step in the pyramid. So that's the third step in the pyramid for me. And that is to teach and share what we know. And so, me, for example, I'm teaching and sharing the trust technique to my clients, and I'm providing NeuroGraphica courses. And down there, positive intelligence or the mental fitness is, of course, lacking in the first level of my pyramid, because that is something that I also share and a lot with you all in my podcast. So my podcast is something where I share. I am also working with students at EU Business School, so I'm sharing my knowledge at a business school. I'm sharing my knowledge with my friends and family. So that's something that we can include in here, friends and family. And of course, there are other ways, other courses. For example, I've also done some research about horse sleep deprivation. So another thing that I have looked into and that I'm sharing right now. And it's a combination of multiple things down there, because I have looked, as I said, into medicine. I have looked into psychology. I've looked into many different things. And the higher up I get in my pyramid, the more I am combining those. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to combine those elements that we have learned, the knowledge that we have acquired. And the top of the pyramid, to me, really, that is where we come up with our own ideas. That's our inventions. Well, inventions is a big role, but everything that you put together in a different way, in a new way, is an invention after all. It's an innovation. We could also say innovation, because that's where you combine your unique collection of knowledge, your unique collection of wisdom and insights, and come up with something new. And for me, this something new, again, there will be multiple things, but for me, the one thing new that I have now is neuropositive pathways, because that combines really everything that I find so fascinating from NeuroGraphica, from neuroscience, from my work with the animals and their people, from the trust technique. And so, neuropositive pathways, that is really something where I combine all of these wonderful things down there. And in my pyramid now, I have 4 different layers. The basis is really what I learned. The next step is how I apply those things for myself, for others in my environment. The third level is how I share these things. And that's, by the way, the threshold between 2 and 3 for many people, and including myself, is really, really big, because it takes a lot of self-confidence. It takes a lot of initiative, motivation, and also discipline to turn what we learned and applied into something that we can share with others, teach to others, and actually, yeah, make sure that they can take advantage of what we know. And isn't that wonderful? And then again, it's wonderful to not only share the things that we have learned down there, but make our own thing from that, because we have this ability, but also the obligation really to shape the world in our way, because this is something that really makes us unique, and we're all unique. So no matter the background you have a very unique background, and it's wonderful if you share your view, your perspective with the world. Now, When you start then working on this pyramid in a NeuroGraphica way, we can use NeuroGraphica lines. And by the way, I have a channel for NeuroGraphica, so you can look up what those lines look like. And what I'm doing now is I draw lines from the bottom of the pyramid going through the different circles there and going up there so that I create relationships and I combine things. And with every line I draw, I can ask myself, well, what does this knowledge about leadership and psychology have to do with my work in the business school? So, how can I make sure that I apply that and I share that appropriately with my students? How have I done this so far? What else could I use from there? Mental fitness again, mental fitness in the business school. How can I leverage that? And so with every line, I start asking myself, well, what is the actual meaning? What is the actual connection between those? And this gives me a whole new ability, a whole new perspective on everything that's going on from a learning perspective. But that's a completely different topic that we might be looking into. Why am I using those lines in NeuroGraphica, and how can I make sure that while I'm drawing them, I pay attention to what's happening not only on paper but also within me, because that's a wonderful tool again to think about topics, to work on issues, to work on challenges, to find solutions. And so this would be the next level really of leveraging NeuroGraphica for your particular topic. But I thought it would be nice for me to show you how, when I think about things, how I leverage NeuroGraphica, how I make sure that I use whatever I can because I've learned it, I applied it, and now I'm sharing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. What is it that you learned? What is your basis of your pyramid? How are you applying it? What do you already share, and how are you sharing, and whom are you sharing with? Because all of that is so important. So stay curious, keep learning, and make sure you apply what you learn. Make sure you share what you learned, and make also sure that you combine everything into your own thing and start sharing you and your uniqueness to the world. Thank you for today. I hope you all lead well, yourself and others. Have a wonderful week and speak soon. Bye-bye.
This was Lead Well. Now, what is the one thing that you're taking away from this episode? Please share in the comments below, and do share the podcast with your friends and family, but only if you like it.